In terms of spotting trends, it kind of gets back to what I was saying earlier, which is as a entrepreneur, you're kind of having to picture the future a little bit. And sometimes you can be a little bit early with that. So like with Postcard, I really envision kind of a future where social media is no longer so dominant. Where there's not this monolithic social network that kind of everyone is a part of. And I think that that's kind of the direction we're heading. But we're not there yet, right? Like people are still using a lot of social media. I do think that we're going to decrease that usage in the future. But I'm having to reconcile that with consumer behavior today, which is people are using social media. So like one of the things that Postcard does to bridge the two is when you share a post, I put a lot of effort into these things called open graph images. So this is something where if you share your website on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or anything like that, the social networks will ask the website, what image should I put here? And also some other data. And I put a lot of effort into making like a really good image that is dynamic. It'll show the name of your post, the name of your website, your photo, which was difficult. But if you think about Postcard, my vision for the future is, I don't think we'll be on social media as much, but I built all of these features that are really specific to social media. And so it's hard to predict the future, and you have to kind of balance, what do I think the future will be? I want to be working towards that, but also remembering how consumer behavior is today, and adapting for that. For example, like, another good example is electric cars, right? There were people who said, we're going to have electric cars in the future. We're going to build charging stations for electric cars, right? And that's like a rational business decision, but it's hard because you're having to think very much in the future. So I think that's a thing for entrepreneurs, is timing is really difficult to get right. I don't know if I have any good advice there, except that if you can really keep in mind a way to bridge today and the future you're going to, it can be really helpful. And what can be difficult is if you get into the customer's question, starting to get there, if you have this vision for the future, like for Postcard, it's less social media use, more personal newsletters. What can be difficult is you can show it to customers and ask them what the product does, and they might say, oh yeah, I think this is a different thing. Like, this is how I would use it today. And it's difficult because as an entrepreneur, sometimes you have to change people's behavior. And so like with Postcard, right, it's newsletter, website, trying to replace some of these social media networks with this newsletter flow. And some of the early user testing, I would show it to people and they'd say, oh, I don't know if I want the newsletter side, I just want the website, which is one way to use Postcard. And I started thinking, oh, maybe I should change the website. Instead of saying it's a newsletter, it's more like a personal website only. And I realized over time that kind of diluted the product. And people who believed in my vision of the future weren't finding it anymore. And so that's a difficult thing to balance between how people behave today and your vision of the future, because part of it is you'll listen to customers and they won't necessarily tell you that that's what they want. And so you do need to have some confidence in your vision of the future that behavior will change over time. For instance, with remote work, with Moonlight, we had this vision of remote work in the future. We were telling people you should hire remotes, and they'd say, we don't want remotes. And there was a lot of pressure to say, let's stop doing remote work and just do on-site jobs with Moonlight. And little did we know, 2020 would come and a lot of work would go remote. And that was a place where maintaining that vision of the future was important for kind of making it a differentiated site. Because if we made it the same as everybody else today, it would no longer be differentiated. So that's difficult as an entrepreneur, to reconcile your vision of the future and how to get people to change their behavior to do that. And in terms of talking to customers, yeah, I think it's very important. With Postcard, I talked to dozens of people. I would watch them use the product and sign up. Some of this was in person, some of it was over Zoom. And I think that there's really value to qualitative user interviews a lot, because one of the things you'll find is that people blame themselves often when they have trouble with software, and they won't tell you that it's something you should fix. So for instance, with Postcard, there were some buttons that were in weird places or something like that when I was testing the software. People would sign up and say, oh, I messed up. I'm sorry, I messed up. And you would watch it and say, like, no, this is my fault. I designed it bad. But no one is going to blame the company necessarily for a bad design. And so user testing is just incredibly valuable for finding things, because these were cases where people would never tell me, oh, Philip, this button doesn't make sense or the label's weird. They would just blame themselves and say, oh, I don't understand how it works. And so that user testing is incredibly valuable.